Hello, and welcome to the DonorScape webinar, One-Person Shop Using Wealth Screening in a Small Research Office. I'm Kat Banakis, Manager for Client Engagement and Support at Grenzenbach Gleer & Associates Analytics.
And I'm Lynn Ketterman, Development Research Analyst and Stewardship Coordinator at Frostburg State University.
We'll be splitting up today's session into two parts. First, I'll go over the best practices that GG&A has picked up from our years working with you clients on implementing wealth screening, and then I'll turn it over to Lynn to describe their experience at Frostburg State, some of which corresponds to the best practices that we've learned, and some which was unique to the Frostburg setting. We welcome your questions throughout this session. They are going to make our time together so much more interesting and helpful to your work. To submit a question, hover over the green bar you see at the top of your screen until you see a question mark or a conversation bubble, and then be sure to send the question to host, which is my colleague Heather McCown. Any questions that we aren't able to get to during the session will be answered as part of the follow-up transcript that we'll email out to registrants. After this webinar, we will send out a link to a recording of today's session, the PowerPoint presentation that we're going over, and written responses to any questions we aren't able to answer during today's session. If at any point during the webinar you are experiencing technical difficulties, please email my colleague Heather McCown at hmccoun@grenzgleer.com. That's hmccoun@grenzgleer.com. Or you can contact the meeting provider WebEx directly at 866-229-3239. That's 866-229-3239. Finally, all names presented during the GG&A DonorScape training sessions, including all web-based and recorded videos, are from public records and bear no relationship to any GG&A client institutions. The names have been appended with fictional giving and relationship data for demonstration purposes only. So, let's get started. Alrighty. There we are. Okay. So today's session is going to be two parts, the theory of suggested implementation steps, and then the practice using a case study from Frostburg State University. So beginning with the theory portion, we're going to look at step-by-step implementation strategies for wealth screening and predictive modeling, both, that we've found from working with our clients. So these steps are going to be valid whether you have just the gift capacity rating in your account for wealth screening, or if you did a larger predictive modeling project, in which case you have the major gift codes, the annual gift codes, philanthropic capacity rating codes, all of those. So the steps work either way. So first off, we suggest that you designate a project administrator. And that may sound silly for working in a small institution, but I've worked in a number of small nonprofits, and I know that sometimes when you're in a small place where everyone does everything, it's actually harder to figure out who is driving the ship, so to speak. So we do suggest that you have one person who is going to be the administrator, who is going to be in charge of really seeing that this tool that you've purchased is implemented at your location. And second, obviously I'm preaching to the choir here, we suggest that you participate in enough trainings and webinars and phone trainings and everything else to feel comfortable with the ratings. You need to understand what the ratings mean, how to pull lists that are helpful and meaningful to you, And if you don't understand what you're looking at and what it all means, it's not going to be very helpful in your work. Next, we want to figure out what your primary objective is in doing a wealth screening or a predictive modeling project. Most clients are eager to find out what some new major gift prospects might be, and to find out people who haven't been under management, or to find out more about the people who they have been working with. But some of our clients really want to find out more about people only in specific geographic areas, or they want to find out people really in that mid-band region. They feel comfortable with those at the top, and they want to find mid folks. So identify what it is that is your primary objective in doing the wealth screening. And then based on that primary objective, define what's going to be a good prospect to meet that objective for you. So if what you're looking for is new major gift prospects and really high capital individuals, then a good prospect might be someone with a gift capacity rating of $100,000 or more, and a major gift code of A, B, and C. But how you define what's a good prospect to meet your objectives is going to depend on what your objectives are. And then we want to break your entire population with all of their ratings into 4 groups. So moving from the top left quadrant and going clockwise, you're going to come out with a group that has a high GGNA rating who you know. Now, for these people, what you find out from the wealth screening and the modeling may augment and give a fuller picture to people, but you already have a relationship with them in your development office. They're under management. They are known to you. Next, we're going to look at the people who have a low or moderate rating but are under regular management. They may be people who you might not want to focus on as heavily in the future, but for right now, we don't need to pay a whole lot of attention to them. They have a moderate rating, but you know them. Then we've got the folks who have a low moderate rating and are not under regular management. They are no doubt lovely people, and we are glad to have them in the database, but for using our time as efficiently as possible, we're not going to focus on them. Then we're going to come out with people who have a high GGNA rating, who are not under regular management, and heretofore have not been known to you very well. This is who we really want to focus on. And the process of dividing your database up into these 4 groups doesn't need to be terribly high-tech. It could be going through your database with 4 different colored highlighters and figuring out who fits into these different bands. And then once you've got this high GGNA rating, not under management, we want to refine that down to a number that feels feasible for you to work with as the person who's primarily going to be going through these records. So maybe initially you go through and you've got, 300 people who have a high rating but are not under management. And going through that many profiles just seems overwhelming. Refine it down. Go for people who have $250,000 or more at the exact near level until you get it to a number that seems like a reasonable high population to work with. And then we want to develop a process for going through those records. Maybe of those top folks that you don't know, you can process 3 a week and start to verify their profiles. Maybe you can do 2 a week, maybe 5, whatever you think is going to be feasible for you to work with. And then begins the process of verifying these records. So for those high-cap people who are new to you, what we recommend doing is not verifying every piece of data in their profile, but rather look at really key pieces of data and use the record in DonorScape itself to help verify. So we're going to look at their real estate holdings in LexisNexis, their Reuters Market Guide records, which is going to give a nice biographical profile that helps you learn a lot more about the person. Their stock transactions, their Dun & Bradstreet records, even a cursory assessment to throw out what's clearly inaccurate and bring in what's very likely this person is going to give a solid profile, especially at the exact near level. There's a blog post on using the internal record to verify itself on the DonorScape.com blog, which might be helpful. And then parallel to verifying these top records one by one, we recommend exporting your data for all records at the exact and near or at the exact level, whatever high verification level you're comfortable with, into your daily donor management system, because that's the system that you're using day to day that's got the most up-to-date information. And you want to become more familiar with your population day to day and what their ratings are. As you begin doing the verification of those top new prospects, you also move into beginning the relationship building process with them. What the GGNA ratings give is a tool for knowing something more about these prospects, but development is always based on relationship and getting to know people person to person. So as you verify the records, move into either you or your major gift officers starting to call a couple of these new people per week. A common practice amongst our clients is 2 names per 2-week period and reporting out at the end of each month on new people called and met. For those who you're not yet able to set up a meeting with, but who are in that high capacity swath, what might be some ways to create a placeholder strategy for them? Maybe this is the population you want to target for some surveys, to reach out to for some new volunteer opportunities, some way that you can be continually thinking about this new high capacity group even though you can't make one-to-one contact. And then for those people who are not in that tip-top category, but who are still a moderate promise rating, maybe they are pools for other sorts of prospect groups. So they're not going to be the place that you're going to focus your immediate one-to-one relationship building, but maybe they're good for invitations to some special events, for particular and somewhat more personalized letters and mailings, just so that you can be using the ratings to refine your communication and pool building. And then finally, we suggest that you schedule specific dates to review progress, if only for yourself. It can seem silly in a small population to do progress reviews sometimes because it's me, myself, and I doing all of this work. But when I've worked in a number of nonprofits, I find, and all of them small for the most part, I find that it's so helpful to take these opportunities every quarter or so to look at what's happened so that there's a sense of movement and progress in using the data. And the metrics that you use will depend on you. Maybe it's how many records you've been able to verify and how many new meetings that quarter. And then to refine based on that what should be the goals for next quarter. And the purpose of having these regularly scheduled reviews is so that you can continue to refine how you use this tool, that you have all of this new data, and to make sure that you're using it and refining your use of it in a way that's actually helpful to how you're working with your prospect pool. So I'm going to pause quickly and just see if we have no questions. Fantastic. So now that we've thought about the theory of implementation, I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague Lynn Ketterman at Frostburg State University in Maryland, who's going to give us a case study on how they have been innovative and creative and wonderful out at Frostburg. So take it away, Lynn.
Hey, thank you, Kat. Can you hear me, just to make sure I'm off the mute?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. I'll start by giving you a little background on Frostburg State University and our small shop. We are a public university under the University System of Maryland. We have 5,400 students and 32,000 contactable alumni. And our University Advancement Office has 12 full-time staff working in development, and this includes my position, which is only half-time research. Our foundation has 1 full-time and 1 part-time assistant, and then our pride and joy, of course, are our 12 student work-study students, interns, and a graduate student. We just love our students here at Frostburg. Our fundraising operation has gone through a rebirth in the last 4 years since bringing in a new vice president. We are actively working to change our philanthropic culture here, and we completed our most recent $15 million campaign this past June, bringing in $16.7 million, and have now entered a silent phase for our next campaign. About a year ago, the University System of Maryland Foundation staff invited us to be part of a system-wide wealth screening opportunity, which is how I came to know our friend Kat at GG&A. Okay, we are located in the beautiful rural mountains of western Maryland, centrally located between Pittsburgh, D.C., Baltimore, and Morgantown, West Virginia. The majority of our alumni are located in Maryland and contiguous counties, but we know that opportunities are certainly waiting for us across the United States. When deciding to do wealth screening, we needed to make a few important decisions. First, who should we screen? We decided that we would screen our entire list of active addressable alumni and friends. We really didn't want to limit ourselves at this stage in our operation, as we were looking for the broader picture. Why are we screening these constituents, and what are we trying to accomplish? Our first goal was to find the cream of the crop. As we were building from the ground up, we needed some tips on where to start, where to look outside of those we were asking time and time again. Finding new donors to bring closer into us is so important to growth, and it's easy to keep going back to the same donors over and over again because they say yes, and it's great to have those people that are giving annually to our efforts. But if we're ignoring others that might just need a personal ask, we're certainly missing opportunities. When did we do our wealth screening? For Frostburg, our when was essentially planned for us because we were part of our system-wide project. But the timing worked well for our circumstances. We were able to use our results in the end months of our last campaign, and now we are using our data as a planning tool for our next campaign. So how did we screen? Because we went through some transitions with our database, we were hampered by some issues. But after the fact, I think we would have benefited by making sure that our data had more degree information so that we could separate results by college and major earlier. But we solved this problem later on when we entered our screening results into our database. Receiving our results, of course, was overwhelming at first. I dreamed about getting back a list of names numbered exactly in priority order of who we should go to and the gift amount that they would surely give us when our gift officer met with them for the first time. I'm sure everyone hopes and dreams about that. But instead, there were all of these codes and numbers and data to verify. Was my dream becoming a nightmare? Absolutely not. There was so much information, and the challenge was finding time to sort through it all and prioritize our next steps. This is the point when I enlisted the help of Kat at GG&A. Together, we queried lists of high capacity, most likely to give prospects, and with a little tutoring and aha moments, I was able to query some simpler lists on mydonorscape.com for planned giving and annual giving in areas of capacity and willingness to give on my own. I also marveled in the fact that researching a single prospect had become as simple as looking up the information collected by GG&A on mydonorscape.com. A great time saver. Then we narrowed down our list to the top 50 prospects, which I later refined to a shorter list of about 35 by reviewing our internal data, and then requested help from our system office to help with verification and to do detailed prospect reports. As a small shop, we are definitely fortunate to have this resource for support. Our next step was to be able to work more closely utilizing our own database and the results of our GG&A screening together. For example, as I mentioned earlier, we did not tag our data with such things like college and major, so being able to incorporate these details into our results was becoming more and more important to us. We made the decision to take our Xactmere results and dump it into our prospect management system. We were then able to do more specific lists on current assigned prospects for a particular project related to a major, event, and activity participants, etc. Then one day, as I was searching through the support materials on mydonorscape.com, I saw a mention about MapPoint. I had always wanted to look at our list geographically, and using zip codes was too tedious and inefficient. If you've ever done that before, you definitely know what I'm talking about. Once our information was in our database, I pulled a report which included our GG&A results along with extensive donor information and imported it into MapPoint using capacity ratings to create the legend. I had to make some adjustments to my original data because MapPoint accepts a maximum of 8 categories in the legend. On a side note, when you create the legend, it shows the number of records in each capacity level. This paints a clear picture where your focus needs to be. For example, if your results have 75 prospects in the 250,000 plus categories and 8,000 in the 10,000 to 25,000 capacity level, you're probably not looking to staff your office with more major gift officers. Again, the data represented here is fictional, but using this visual aid, you can see some great opportunities in California and Colorado. And if you look closely enough, you can see some of the squares representing $1 million plus prospects in the Northeast and Florida. So what was our next step in using this as a tool for our fundraising program? First, we use it for staff travel planning. When our gift officers are planning a trip, we import a current list of our alumni on the map, draw a radius circle, which I'll show you later, and export the list, and then I choose opportunities based on wealth screening and past giving. We research the top prospects to verify their information, and then the gift officer begins making calls. We are using MapPoint to engage our board members with alumni in their community, and we are using MapPoint to assist us with encouraging event attendance and to seek out new prospects in geographic regions where alumni are concentrated. I will speak to the last two toward the end of the presentation, but first, I want to focus on maximizing staff travel time. Let's review an example of how this works. The VP says that he's going to be attending a conference being held at San Francisco Airport. He has 2-hour lunch breaks and would like to meet with prospects that are close to the airport while he's attending the conference. Using the radius tool, I draw a 10-mile radius using the San Francisco Airport as my center point. Because I included all the information I could when I imported my data into MapPoint, I can export all the same information on each point that falls within the radius circle for further evaluation. The exported format is a very easy-to-use Excel document. After selecting some of the top-rated prospects, we determined that heading down Route 280 has the best potential for the most visits. They can be marked and routed in MapPoint, and the program can also provide timed directions. Looking further, there are 2 prospects within 20 miles with $1 to $10 million ratings. The VP decides to contact these prospects and adds a day before and after the conference to make these important visits. And then we discover that the $1 million prospect knows 5 of the 6 alums within 3 miles of his residence. He invites them all to his home for lunch with the VP, and what a great way to make the most of a travel opportunity. Can you imagine figuring this out using zip codes? Of course, we can see other opportunities in this area, and our strategy is to develop an engaged group of volunteers who can plan and host events for the greater alumni population in that area. And I'd like to talk to you about a real-life example from Frostburg that was just this past week. One of our gift officers wanted to take a road trip down to Atlanta and back, and we had previously used MapPoint to create a core group of volunteers last spring in Atlanta, which was very successful. This time, she had a list of specific prospects in the region that she wanted to visit for individual reasons. So we mapped out each individual point, and then the MapPoint program figured out a route and provided directions and timing. Based on this, she called each prospect and scheduled her visits. And when she found she had an open block of time, we searched the route for possible prospects, ones we didn't know yet, to fit in between. Finding visits within 10 to 15 miles from the main highway she was traveling, maximizing every minute of travel time. And she just told me this morning that she had visited with 13 people in less than a week. So that was really a very, very good opportunity. As we move forward into our next campaign, we are hoping to maximize our efforts in 2 areas, engaging board members and using geographic strategies in planning events within and outside Maryland. We have been trying to think of some great ideas on how to involve our board members more in one-on-one fundraising visits. One of the things we've decided to do is look at prospects in the community where our board members live. Giving them a chance to connect with neighbors close by that they might know personally makes relationship building convenient. In some cases, when the list is big, sometimes I will narrow down this list using class year or seek out prospects that have a similar field of work. We look at past giving, job title, employer, and class year. It really depends on the person what recommendations I make, but we also like to focus on our prospects that have capacity rating provided by GG&A. We've also been using different geographical strategies when planning events. We hosted an event at downtown DC location recently. It provided us an excellent opportunity to thank our current donors, but it also was a great chance for us to invite a few new prospects. Using our results from GG&A and MapPoint, we determined high-capacity donors that lived within a 10 to 12-mile radius of our event location that we could pay special attention to and encourage them to attend, reminding them how close we were to their home. In another instance, when creating our guest list for an event in Texas, we also used MapPoint to prioritize phone calls to our best-rated prospects living closest to the event site in order to encourage their attendance. Again, a strategy that makes a list of 100 names become more workable. We had about 20 plus in attendance. Our university is in Maryland, and not a surprise, we have a large concentration of alumni in our state. As shown earlier, the radius tool is very helpful in planning visits where multiple alumni can be brought together. Using the legend, we can visually see where alumni with capacity live and plan events in those areas. On a side note, MapPoint has the ability to show local hotels and restaurants in the area, which is another great tool when making travel plans. In closing, one of the greatest things we found about our results was that we have so much opportunity waiting for us. It would have been very disappointing to find that we had already visited and stretched our top prospects, but instead our well screening with GG&A pointed out to us that our potential donors are out there waiting for us to tell them all the exciting things we are doing here at Frostburg State University. Kat, back to you.
Thanks, Lynn. That was fantastic. I just want to say quickly that while this wasn't a plug for MapPoint, certainly it is something that we offer. All of our data dumps into it directly, and it's an excellent opportunity to say that when we roll out with DonorScape 2.0, hopefully sometime in the next year, it will have a mapping feature on it. So that will be great to be able to do completely in one fell swoop package. Lynn, we've gotten 2 questions for you.
Okay.
The first was, did you find the ratings that you exported at the exact near level to be pretty legit? Were they on target? Were they too low, too high? Because you said you exported them into your donor management system. So was that a good thing?
I would say that when we did the top group of people, the top prospects, the 35 or so, we probably had maybe 5 of those that, again, that was at the very highest level, and some of them have names like Smith or something like that, and it does sometimes pose a problem where the names are kind of it's not the right person. So we had maybe 5 out of the top 50 that we gave them to research that came back that that really wasn't the person. So I would say for the most part it has been really successful in finding the right person. And I think I always say this about wealth screening is it's supposed to be something that leads you in a direction to approach that person. It's not an exact science. It can never be an exact science, but it's definitely going to help you to identify people to go to. That's where I that's kind of how I would describe it.
Yeah. And then we had a question come in that said, do you use other financial data from the outside also for income and stocks and to verify the DonorScape data? And if so, do you find that the outside data is more or less accurate?
I think we haven't gotten quite that detailed. We've depended a lot on the GGNA wealth screening, and again, it's like I don't think the things that we have found have been right on with what GGNA has. I mean, we've verified a lot of the data, and everything that we find is right on. But I don't think we've had any trouble with that.
Yeah. When we generally work with places, we find that there is outside verification that goes on with Google and past experience with different sources and that sort of thing. So it's always going to be a combination of things. Lynn, could you talk a little bit about, I know that in the past you said that you had some difference now in how you're targeting staff, both geographically and the number of asks and that sort of thing, based on what you found to be the gift capacity ratings that's sort of changing things for the next campaign. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. And how are you talking about how we divide our staff up and how they go, who they go to?
Yeah, because you were saying that you had to move where you had your staff focused geographically.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, what we've been doing is we've been using our top prospects as kind of the starting point as to where we go when we look at the map and everything and where we're going to go next. We kind of look at those top prospects, and then we send our gift officers to that area, and then we do what I explained on the presentation, where we look at everyone else around that area and kind of focus on that area. So our top prospects that we found through our screening is kind of what helps us to decide where we are going next. That's either that or a travel opportunity, like I mentioned earlier. If you're vice president's going somewhere, or, you know, you have somebody going to a particular area, we would kind of focus on that area. But our top prospects are what is leading us to go to certain areas of the country to find other prospects in that area. So that's kind of how we're using the priorities with our staff.
We had a question come in about your use of your students and grad students that you love. In your work with them so far, what have you found are the things that you can pretty safely and confidently hand off to alleviate your workload, and what do you tend to keep for yourself when trying to utilize volunteers and students?
I have a work study student that works directly for me, and for instance, we used our right now we're working on our chemistry department, and we're trying to find prospects for chemistry. And so I sent my student to do some research on verifying their business information, and, you know, the priorities that I made him, I used the GG&A information to select the highest capacity donors, and then he's researching their, you know, business information and going back and doing the verification process. So that's a good project for him. In fact, this morning he found some new news about an alum that we didn't know, and so I think that's been really positive. Another use of our students, they just find stuff, and they are so helpful when you're just, you know, when you don't have time to sit at your desk and look up every single person on a 100-person list. Students are great with that, and they love to find out things about your university, and I'm even convincing my student that our university and how great it is because of all the great things our alumni are doing. He's gaining more confidence in the university too. So that's a perk of having student workers.
That's a great side effect. Well, we're coming to the end here of the presentation, so we're going to have just a couple more minutes if anyone has more questions to submit based on the theory side of things or the practice of it for Lynn's experience. This is a special webinar in that I know many of you who are on this call, and you are filled with wisdom of experience in how you've best implemented it at your spots. And I know that Lynn and I have barely been able to scratch the surface with this session. So if you have ideas that you think would be helpful to share with other small places of what you've done, similar to what Lynn was able to do at Frostburg State, or that you've done and found to be just a great practice, please share your stories with us. Send me an email at support@donorscape.com or send an email to me directly, and we'll be sure to include your advice and experiences in the follow-up materials or in a future blog post or something to be able to share what you've done with other DonorScape users. Any questions that occur to you late in the middle of the night that you meant to ask on the webinar, you can send to the same address, and we'll include your answers in the follow-up material. After we finish up this afternoon, you'll receive 2 surveys for this session. One is from our meeting provider, WebEx, about the technical aspects of the webinar. And one is from us at GG&A about how we can improve our training sessions and your ideas for future sessions. And please do fill that out because we want to be a resource for you. So thank you all for participating in the webinar today, and we hope that you'll join us for future sessions. And thanks especially to Lynn Ketterman and the team at Frostburg State University in Maryland for your time and generosity, and for telling the Frostburg story. I have learned so much in the process of this webinar, and I'm sure our whole community has also. So thank you very much, Lynn.
Thank you, Kat.